There we are. Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday evening to you. I tell you,
Oh, happy Tuesday to you.
it is to you too. Yeah, I had a hard time coming back to the office tonight because this is my favorite sort of weather to walk around in. It's not super cold. It wasn't windy. The air is moist, but there's not a hard driving rain. I suspect nature nerds like me might be out tonight, but I know we're going to have a lot of nature on the move tonight too. We're going to take a look at some of that a little bit later on in the program. In fact, let's just get going with all of it. I've got a screen share. I'm going to start here and we are going to get some good nature. All right, well, that leads us into our very first topic, which was not so coincidentally the subject of last week's column, song sparrows. And before we delve into what makes these birds so unique, I wanted to make sure we all knew what a song sparrow looked like. They fall into that class of LBJs, the little brown jobs, but they have some pretty distinctive features that you can look for. They are, by the way, probably are one of our most common species, to beyond, well, next to the house sparrows that are not native. These guys have a broad range, and in this area, they have adapted quite nicely to both our neighborhood habitats as well as our grasslands next to woodlands. So a lot of different places. They're described as medium-sized, but the things I always look for are the markings up here on the front. They've got a streaky breast, and if you close your eyes and you picture sparrows, depending on where you are in your bird IDs, you might be able to divide them into two different groups, the streaky breast and the clear breast. Well, the song sparrow has a streaky breast, but then they've got a dark spot right in the middle. It's something you can look for that in addition to the song, and you've got yourself a almost positive ID. You can look for a few other things too. The stripes up here on the head, note that this one goes through the eye. And birders also talk about what's called the malar stripe, which is also the mustache stripe. So I put all those factors together, and if it matches what you're looking at, you know you've found yourself a song sparrow. Now, these birds have been studied quite a bit because of their songs and actually their variation in songs. There's been a lot of studies done. This one here at the bottom that I cited goes all the way back over 50 years to 1965, where in 120 birds, they tape recorded over 7,000 songs, and they found 544 song patterns within those songs. That happens when a bird starts off with kind of a rudimentary framework in its head, and then it learns from other birds. In this case, this is one of those species, and I know a couple of weeks ago we talked about some bird species where the females sing too. Well, with song sparrows, it's the males that do the elaborate vocalizations, and they learn from other males. They kind of have role models that are also called tutors that they will observe and listen to, and then pattern their songs after. Now, sometimes that leads to competition between those males as subsequent breeding seasons come along, because one guy, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but it can be annoying when you're both going after the same girl. What I thought we could do now is listen. I've got a few recordings here, and you can, if you listen closely, and sometimes it's easier to do this with your eyes closed, but listen and see if you can hear the variations in these songs. These first two are Illinois birds. So there's kind of those first few notes. Around here, they seem to start with usually 3 notes that I always think sound sweet, sweet, sweet. And then there's some trills and burbles that come after that. So his beginning is almost, it's that. And then this guy, listen to this again. So minor differences, but I tell you, if you're a female song sparrow, those minor differences could make all the difference. Now, here's a song sparrow from up in the Pacific Northwest. See if you think it sounds any different. That trill has a lot more, I think he's gonna go again here. Almost a metallic sound to it. Crow in the background, some chickadees. So suffice it to say, there's a lot of activity going on right now in the world of song sparrows as they move into their breeding season in this area. Now, this winter, we did a class at Hickory Knolls. It was a pretty chilly day. It was after one of the big snows. It was on bird nests, which, by the way, looking at bird nests in the wintertime is really a fun hobby to get into, because it's a great time to look for them because there's no leaves on the trees. And it was one of our first programs that we were actually able to hold in person this year. So that was another fun reason to get out. But as we were walking around, I saw a couple of sparrows, and I was expecting maybe, American tree sparrows, which is a species that visits us in the winter, and then they go back north. And I looked again, I thought, well, gosh, that looks like song sparrows. I didn't realize at the time that we're in the part of their range where they can be seen year round. I always thought when I started hearing them singing in the springtime that they'd just come back. But we actually have a fair amount of song sparrows that are able to stay here all winter long. You can see some travel quite a bit farther north. And there is a considerable amount of the population that winters further south from here. Now, the sparrows we saw in, when was it, late January, early February, were they the same ones that are nesting here? Now, that I don't know. It's hard to tell if they were here overwintering or if they're here because they're residents. But you have a chance of seeing song sparrows all year round, but this is the time of year when you hear them singing. So this is something else that we didn't talk much about in the column, but I thought it was a neat thing to know. They don't nest up in trees. They nest near the ground or actually on the ground. A lot of times they'll look for shelter underneath leaves. This photo on the right was actually from someone's garden. Those are pea plants, and the nest was tucked underneath the shelter of those leaves. And the photo on the right, this was in more of a prairie habitat. There's some larger leaves up above where the parent bird is preparing to shove some delicious looking items there into some very hungry looking baby song sparrows. This might be something to look for if you're big into gardening. If you've got plants that create shelter in your yard, take a peek under some of those leaves. If you find a nest, and it is a constructed nest, some of our ground nesting birds like the killdeer, when they nest on the ground, it's really just kind of a depression and the mom plops some eggs in it and defends those eggs from any kind of threats. But the song sparrow does build a nest out of dried plant material, weaves it together, and then puts those eggs in there. They've got a range of colors. Some are almost white. They're a kind of a grayish color with brown spots. They can go to blue or even a grayish green color, but then they'll have that. Usually some of those brown spots will be clustered towards one end of the egg, as you can see in that picture there. So song sparrows, they're here, they're singing. Keep your ears open for them and keep your eyes open too. Now, this next topic came to me literally when I was out on a walk the other day. It not only came to me, it came on me. I actually had 3 reasons for this topic because I found 3 ticks. It is that season already. For a couple of weeks now, I've been hearing of people who've been finding them when they were working outside, or they've been finding them on their dogs. And I thought it might be a good idea to just sort of review who we've got in this area and why they are so good at what they do. Now, when I started here at the Park District, that was in 2007. And at that time, we we were doing some proactive tick education with our school program attendees, because we had a ton of dog ticks, especially out at the park. What's now called Hickory Knolls. At the time it was called Campton Hills Park, but a lot of dog ticks would come out in the springtime. Dog tick is the species that's in the middle of these drawings. Some people also call them wood ticks. All 3 of these species that we're looking at here carry diseases, but the one that everyone's most concerned about is the species on the left, the black-legged or deer tick. That's the known vector for Lyme disease, and it's seemingly more and more common in this area. On the right, we have the Lone Star tick, which is also present in Illinois. And to be perfectly honest with you, if we were doing this program like 2 or 3 years ago, I would have cut that picture out. But as we'll see in a couple of slides, I left it in for a good reason. And just to be clear, sometimes people see these things on the ground and think, oh my goodness, it's a tiny, tiny little engorged tick. These are actually, and sorry for the quality, it was a picture I took a few years ago. That's a red velvet mite. When we get a lot of moisture in the springtime, these guys will come out. They're a neat species in themselves. The males are looking to court the females, but they don't have any external reproductive organs. So he has to figure out a way that he can over to her without actually touching her. So there's dances. He weaves some tangled webs. She dances back. It's really a fascinating story, but I'm going to leave that for another time because they're not ticks, and that's what we're talking about tonight. Are these guys here? These are ticks I've come to know in the past. These 2 are female deer ticks. Look at how well adapted they are for their ectoparasitic lifestyle. These mouth parts are enormous, and they're not only are there little tiny hooks in there that once they're inside your skin they hook on, but there's also a substance, almost like a glue, that ticks can exude that helps them attach and stay on even better. These were a couple of female dog ticks. We have a saying, those of us who fancy ticks, with the dog ticks, it's the females that wear a necklace. If you find a brown tick like this and it's got light markings that go kind of stem to stern, those we call the suspenders. That would be a male dog tick. Now, the male deer ticks, they lack this reddish part of the abdomen, and they're kind of an overall dark color with a light margin around the edge of the abdomen. They're very good at what they do, and right now they're very hungry. Ticks aren't terribly mobile. They don't have wings. They rely really on hitchhiking to get around. They start off, these ticks are small, as you can tell from my fingernail, from the tip of that pen, from my pant leg. But they start off even smaller. And, you know, a lot of times people say, oh, well, deer ticks, they're really small. They might be a skosh smaller than a deer tick, but I don't find a mature deer tick to be that noticeably smaller than, they're all pretty little. The one kind of cool thing though, when they are not fully developed, when they are still in their larval stage, they only have 6 legs. Ticks are arachnids, so they have 8 legs as adults, but when they're little, they've only got 6. They need to molt a few times before they get that that last set of legs. So don't be thrown. If you think you're looking at a microscopic tick, but it's only got 6 legs, you're probably looking at a larval, the larval form, and it has a little bit of growing up to do. Now, this was kind of a fortuitous thing that happened at Hickory Knolls a couple of years ago. The woman on the left is Dr. Holly Tootin, and she is an Illinois vector ecologist. And she happened to be up here at Kane County speaking to the Kane County Health Department. And she just sort of out of the blue called Hickory Knolls and wanted to know if she could come over and do a tick survey. So I said, sure, just as long as I get to come with. So she came out, she and her grad student assistant came out wearing, I kid you not, hazmat clothing. She was head to toe in white. They had hoods that they'd put on. These women were dealing with disease carrying organisms all the time. So they were smart to be protecting themselves that way. She also advised, you can see she's wearing light colored clothing there. She advised, even just the layperson that's going out and walking around, that light colored clothing definitely will help you see these little critters much more easily than if you were wearing dark colored clothes. And she always recommended long sleeves as well. Any areas of your clothing that have gaps, if you can seal those up, that will help protect you as well. But what we did was we went out, and she has these, you can see I'm holding one on the right. It kind of reminded me of a sail. There's a dowel rod at one end and a rope, and then there's all these, it's cloth, just kind of a, I don't know, sort of it had a bit of a nap to it. I don't know exactly if it was what kind of cloth it was, but it was good at picking up things like little burrs and also little ticks. So we went out, and she marked off several quadrants in the back of Hickory Knolls. And I was so excited for her to see all the deer ticks and all the dog ticks that we had. And we found one. She did say though, and I thought this was interesting, because when she visited, it was in, I believe this was in June, and we had just had a huge surge of ticks in May. And she said that their population does kind of go through peaks and valleys throughout the warm weather months. So she promised that she'd come back sometime and we could go on another tick hunt. And I hope she does, because I know we've got a lot that we could share with her. So Holly works with the Illinois Natural History Survey's medical entomology program. This is a neat website. Now, this isn't a website that you will, if you have a tick on you that's embedded, one, you want to remove it. There's all kinds of helpful videos on that. What you don't want to do, you don't want to stick a match on its butt. You don't want to bury it in Vaseline, or you don't want to pour alcohol on it. Anything that's going to agitate the tick is going to increase its chances of it getting upset. And when ticks are upset, they regurgitate. And whatever's in their stomach is going to come out. And if they're still attached to you, it's going to go from their body into yours. And that's where those diseases can be introduced. So this isn't the site that you go to when you've got a tick embedded on you. You want to work with your doctor if you feel like you've incurred a bite, especially if it's starting to show a rash. But if you're just curious about ticks that you found, you are more than welcome to send them. And they're going to help Dr. Tootin with her research, because right now it's really just 2 people trying to survey the entire state of Illinois. And she doesn't just do ticks, she does mosquitoes too. So anything that you find that you would like to send to her, I know that she would welcome. Her information is on a little bit lower down on this website. Again, medical entomology at the Illinois Natural History Survey. If you put that into your search engine, this page should come up pretty quickly. There's lots of helpful information on here, a lot of detail about the work that they do. It also links to the Illinois Department of Public Health. And that's where this third tick species comes in. When Holly was up here, she was telling me about how ticks are advancing northward. Science isn't completely at a consensus on this yet, but they're pretty sure that it has to do with our changing climate and warming winters, and ticks that once were just a part of the South are now being found in the North as well. So you can see the Lone Star tick, which I've seen before. This is a very distinctive looking tick. It's got a white dot on its back. So can't really be mistaken for the other two. I've brought several of these. I've found them on me, but only when I've been way down in Southern Illinois. I've never seen one up here. But Holly said, you know, be on the lookout for them because there's a chance that they could be here. If you think you found a Lone Star tick, you definitely want to send that to her, because that can be added to their collection of data, and we can help fill in some more squares on this range map. Not that we really want to fill in all the squares, because that means we've got more ticks. But anyway, this you can link to this site from the Illinois tick. This is the Illinois Department of Public Health, their tick surveillance map. They also show the broader range of the Lone Star tick, and you can see too that we are pretty firmly within what the suspected range is. So just because our county is not filled in the state map doesn't mean they're not here. Maybe we just haven't found them yet. So something new to be on the lookout for. And by this point, you're probably starting to scratch a little bit and feel a little bit uncomfortable. You might be wondering, well, how do I protect myself from these threats? Hewley and Tom Pruker, I think you are part of this group here. These are the happy hikers that have branched out from Hickory Knolls and walk in parks throughout Kane County now. And in the summertime, they go into tick survival mode, which includes tucking your pants into your socks and wearing clothing that has been treated with permethrins. Now, you can buy treated clothing. Insect Shield happened to be the brand that was featured on that sleeve on the previous slide. When you buy this sort of clothing, I think they say that the treatment lasts up to 70 washings. And permethrins are chemicals that are, they actually kill the insect. They're not a repellent. They actually will kill ticks. They've been determined by the EPA to be safe for human contact. So that if you're worried about wearing a poison in your clothing, this is one that would be considered safe. It's even safe for children and for pregnant women. You can also buy permethrins to spray on your clothing and treat them that way. That has a little bit shorter lasting effect. I think those are good for like 6 or 7 washings. And you can also treat camping gear and things like that too, so you don't haul the ticks home with you. Consumer Reports actually rated, in addition to the tick killing chemicals in the Insect Shield clothing, they also looked at repellents. And in fact, the recommendation is to wear the clothing that will kill the tick and combine that with a repellent. These are the top 3 products that Consumer Reports determined to be effective in repelling the ticks as well. Sawyer, it's a 20% picardin. I'm sorry, I don't know my chemical pronunciations very well, but the 20% is the recommended concentration for that particular brand. In the middle, we've got the ever famous DEET, 30% concentration. Made by Benz, and that's their wilderness formula. And then on the right, this is actually a DEET-free formulation. It's got it's lemon eucalyptus repellent, and it's supposed to be very effective. It especially when you combine it with your Insect Shield clothing. So what is that about the ounce of prevention? Bringing a pound of cure. These actually come in 4-ounce sizes, so you get 4 ounces of protection with every purchase. So now last week, the topic of gypsy moths came out, and I realized that maybe we needed to cover this a little bit more. This is the bur oak tree that's out in front of Good Natured World headquarters here on Walnut Street. And every year it gets maybe a couple of dozen female gypsy moth insect cases where, which means we had, at least that many females the year before laying eggs. And I wanted to just kind of show you what it was I was talking about. Now, this is actually a still from a video I'd taken. One of the clues that your tree might have, your hardwood tree, I should say, might have gypsy moths in it is fluttering brown moths in the daytime. They're about the size of maybe a $50. Those are the male gypsy moths, and they're detecting the pheromones that are being set off by the female gypsy moths. So if you see brown moths fluttering around the tree in the daytime, that's your first clue that there might be a gypsy moth issue going on there. You also, and this is what you can do now, another ounce of prevention. Look on your trees, especially oaks. I said it just hardwoods. I believe I've seen these up north on some pine trees too, but the gypsy moths, the reason they're a problem are these guys here, the caterpillars. They are just voracious and feeding on leaves, and enough gypsy moth caterpillars present on a tree, they'll defoliate it. And if the tree goes through 2 consecutive growing seasons, losing its leaves, it's probably going to die. We saw this happen when I worked at the Fox Valley Park District at there was a white oak tree that was hit hard by gypsy moths in the early 2000s. And it didn't survive. And it was kind of sad because we estimated it to be well over 200 years old. Anyway, on the left-hand side here, this is the egg case that the female makes. I would say that is a little bit shorter than my thumb. And they typically will position themselves, because remember the females, they don't fly. So they position themselves somewhere where they might not be quite as obvious to a predator, like a bird. So they'll be in a crevice somewhere. And then they kind of, just like that, what is that stuff, that great stuff, the insulation in a can, she'll kind of like squirt out this, well, it's slower than great stuff. It takes her quite a while to make this little creation here, but it comes out and the eggs are inside this kind of silken material. In fact, that's the reason why we have gypsy moths. They were brought here because I don't know if it was a get rich quick idea, but the thinking was we can use these cases here to make silk. Oh wait, was it the egg cases or was it the pupal cases? I think it was the egg cases. Anyway, these were supposed to be silkworm substitutes here in the United States, and it didn't work. What we ended up with was a bunch of caterpillars that are eating all of our trees. Here's the female at work, and you can see she's kind of tucked away in there. Her wings look fairly well developed, but again, she doesn't do any flying. She just, she has a very large abdomen, so she's not very aerodynamic. The male will find her, they'll mate, and then shortly after that is when she begins that egg production. So best thing to do if you find the egg cases, I talked to our arborist again about what should we be doing, because I'd hate to see this tree. It's already got a lot of threats, being surrounded by concrete and housing and things like that. What can we do to help protect it? And he said, just scrape the cases off, put them in soapy water, and they will not survive. And we'll just, so we're going to continue with that manual approach to keeping this particular population under control. But that's, when we talked about it last week, it reminded me that we should probably cover this again. So if you've got any other questions, we can talk afterwards. But gypsy moths, they usually emerge in, oh gosh, it's in the summertime. I want to say June, July, somewhere in that range. So we've got a little bit of time yet before we'll be seeing the adults, but now's the time you can scrape those egg cases off and get rid of them. So let's switch to something happy. We've been talking about ticks and gypsy moths. Let's look at one of the cutest little flowers in the woods these days. This is an American hazelnut female flower. And I tell you, you have to look really closely in order to be able to find these. But you can find the hazelnut bush itself by looking for the male catkins. You can see in this picture here on the right, there's a little bit of pink here. I think there was some pink. Where's the other one at? I don't see it now, but they will have male and female flowers on the same plant, but the timing has to work out just right where the flowers, the male flowers are releasing their pollen at the same time that the female flowers are open and receptive. If everything goes right, we'll get back to that in a minute. We start to see the formation of nuts. Here's some American hazelnuts. This is in a bush outside of hickory knolls. Look at the frills. These are some of the most beautiful nuts that we have in this area. I've always wanted to taste one. They're supposed to be delicious. But I've never gotten a chance to because they're not even ripe yet in August. And the chipmunks and the squirrels have always beaten me to it. I'm going to keep trying. Hazelnuts, they were the #1 understory shrub listed in the surveyors that kind of laid out the grid that's now the state of Illinois. When they were coming through here in the late 1830s and 1840s, they were making notes of the vegetation. We had a lot of oaks, we had a lot of hickories in this area. In our understory tree, the one most often mentioned was the American hazelnut. And these days, it's pretty rare. Unfortunately, we have a lot of buckthorn and honeysuckle in its place, but there are certain rich woodlands where you can look for that. And you can also look in places where it's been planted. Here in St. Charles, we have some out in front of hickory knolls. We have some in the native plant garden over at Potawatomi. That first picture that I showed you, that was from Norris Woods. So keep your eyes open. If we go back here, look for the catkins, then look for those cute little pink flowers. This other photo, this was a little learning episode I had a few years ago. That's hazelnut on the left, and that's witch hazel on the right. I find these plants very similar looking when I'm only looking at the leaves and the way the branches grow. Plus, they both have hazel in the name, but they aren't really that closely related. They're actually in two different families. Witch hazel gets its own family. And around here, we can see either the fall blooming Virginiana witch hazel, or we can find the spring blooming vernalis witch hazel. Witch hazel has its own family. American hazelnut is actually part of the birch family. Now, how I had the aha moment that I did was a gentleman named Tony had been, he was kind of the Pied Piper of giant silk moths in this area. And our giant silk moths, that's like the Luna moth and the Cecropian moth and the Polyphemus moth. Well, Tony was raising Polyphemus moths a few years ago, and he found he had too many and he needed to share them. So he went around to the nature centers and he gave us, some of us took a dozen, some people took 2 dozen, and they raised Tony's Polyphemus moths. Well, he was feeding them a diet of birch because that is what he had at his house. And so when he brought Polyphemus caterpillars to hickory knolls, we didn't have any birch. I have a birch tree at home, but I thought, oh, these guys look hungry. I better go outside and get some. Well, we have witch hazel growing and we have hazelnut growing, and I snipped a branch of each and I put them in there. And boy, those caterpillars could tell it. I couldn't tell the difference, but they could sure tell the difference in those leaves. And they immediately migrated over to the hazelnut and pretty much ate every leaf that I gave them that day. And in the subsequent days too, when I'd bring the birch leaves in. But two different families, two different shrubs, but both very delightful aspects of our forest understories. Now, if you've been walking around Hickory Knolls, in fact, I think there are some other agencies doing similar surveys at this time. You might have seen this weird looking, what are we doing here? Is this, are we, trying to signal to a space station? Is there, are we taking signals in from some other planet? No, what we're doing is we are surveying for salamanders. This is a fence. It's actually it's roof flashing. It doesn't have to be that tall of a fence to get to block a salamander's forward progress. Up a little bit uphill, if you go through this wall of honeysuckle here, this is at the base of one of the hills at Hickory Knolls, one of our knolls. That is where the salamanders, the tiger salamanders that we have on our property, they spend 11 months of the year underneath the ground. Tiger salamanders are part of a family called the mole salamanders. Moles tunnel through the ground. Mole salamanders tunnel in the ground as well. A lot of people say, oh gosh, I never see salamanders anymore. Probably because you really have to look for them, except at this time of the year when they're out and about. Then you can set up something like this and actually catch them on their march down to the breeding ponds. These buckets here are pitfall traps, and the salamander will come down the hill, hit the fence, walk alongside the fence, fall in the bucket every morning about 6:30 or 7 o'clock. Ryan Solomon, our restoration technician, goes and looks in the buckets, and if he's lucky, he finds salamanders. We've got one here, we've got one here, we've got one here. These are part of an ongoing survey. This has been going on. It actually predates Ryan's employment with us. We have what amounts to a very stable population of salamanders on the property. What Ryan will do is measure, he checks the gender, and he checks the sizes. All this is entered into a database. If you want to tell a boy salamander from a girl salamander, you've got to get a little personal with them. You need to look underneath the cloaca or the vent in a male salamander at this time of year is going to be quite swollen. This is right at the base of the tail on the underside. The female, she's going to have a heavier body because she's loaded with eggs. Her purpose of getting to the pond is to find a male, and he will fertilize those eggs as they exit her body. But we've been, like I said, we've been doing this for several years now. We try to handle the salamanders minimally, and then we try to, as soon as possible, get them on their way. So this will be going on now for a few more weeks. In fact, you can see there was still a little bit of ice on the water when we were surveying that day. It seems almost counterintuitive. This is a cold-blooded animal. You'd think they'd need to wait till it was much warmer out, but they are actually moving at the same time and sometimes before our early spring frogs. So in addition to it being tick season and song sparrow season, it is also salamander season. And it's snake season too. See what we did there? March of the snakes. It is March. And we've had this, this warm weather that we've had has actually been bringing the snakes out. Two of our earliest emerging species have been sighted already this year. This is a brown snake, and it's a brown snake. Storaria decay is the scientific name. Some people call these decay snakes, but yeah, brown snake is its other common name. And yes, it is brown. This is not a garter snake that has a pigment issue. They do have a dorsal stripe like our garter snakes, but they're brown. They are not the dark green or black with yellow the way we see on our garters. And they're much smaller too. Female brown snake, and female snakes tend to be larger than male snakes. A female brown snake might be 1.5 feet long, That's pretty big for these guys. They don't really eat anything other than invertebrates, and they consume their prey live. Right now, we're seeing them coming out onto bike trails, warm pavement, where they can, what they want to do is they want to heat their bodies up so they can get some food and shed, and then they want to find a mate. You can see they're a little bit rough condition, having spent the winter underneath the ground. The scales are kind of dull. This particular individual here, like he said, he probably just needed to warm up, find a couple of bugs, go into a shed, and then emerge shiny and happy, and probably looking for a little company in the form of a female snake, female snake. And then we've also seen some garter snakes that have been up and about as well. This is what we would call a Chicago subspecies of the common garter snake. This weird little blip, it only occurs in the collar counties around Chicago, but garter snakes, they have a yellow stripe that goes down their back, and then they've got a yellow stripe on each side of their body. And right up here by the neck, see how these little diamonds cross over that yellow band? That designates this as a Chicago subspecies. Although now that I'm looking at this, I wonder if this might be even a hybrid. Yeah, no, we'll call it a Chicago subspecies. But these guys too, they are up and about, looking to do the same things the brown snakes are, get a little bit of warmth so they can get a little bit of energy, so they can have a snack, maybe some earthworms, or if they're near water, they might grab a fish or two. Then they'll shed, and then they want to look for a mate. Busy, busy, busy time for these guys. And then I'm not a literary critic. I love to read, and Susie, I've got to thank you again for this book. This was so fun, and it had pictures too. It's my favorite kind of book. Nefertiti the spider nut. This tells the story of a spider that actually was in an important experiment that took place up on the International Space Station a few years back. Nefertiti is, the question was, can a spider, a jumping spider no less, hunt in a zero gravity environment? I won't be the spoiler on this. You'll have to read the Nefertiti saga yourself to find out the answer to that question. But it was a fun read. If you like spiders, or if you know somebody who likes spiders, I highly recommend Nefertiti the spider nut. Nefertiti actually is a type of spider. She herself came from Arizona. But you can see by the range map here from Bug Guide, it is a Western species. So it's not one that we would be likely to have around here, but a lot of the behaviors that are described in the Nefertiti book are performed by our own jumping spiders here in Illinois. Our best example that I could think of was the bold jumping spider. You can see Pheidipus is the genus of the bold spider, as well as the Nefertiti spider, the redback jumping spider. So fairly closely related. They both have these bright green chelicerae. That's where their mouth parts are, their fangs are there. The spider here on the left took up residence in our the native bee hotel that we have behind Hickory Knolls. There's a lot of different plant stems and things like that. It's like a giant version of the bee houses that you can buy in garden centers. This actually is a good reason to maybe keep your bee houses small. This spider on the left here recognized what a tremendous opportunity we'd created for just pigging out, because there's all these little bees flying around, and jumping spiders aren't picky about what they eat. They'll eat flies, they'll eat bees. So she moved in and she literally ate like a queen all summer long. This was a couple of years ago, but you can see she's got the bright green chelicerae just like her cousin Nefertiti did. They jump. These are not a spider that spins a web. They can create web. Pretty much any spider has what it takes to make silk, but there's a lot of different ways that silk can be used. In the case of jumping spiders, they leave like a little drag line behind them so they know where they can retreat quickly if they have to. They can follow that line back to wherever their place of safety is. They talk about that actually in the Nefertiti book as well. But these guys are pretty good size for jumping spiders. I would say the abdomen can be about as big around as, say, one of your fingernails. So good size spider, very hairy. The spider here in the middle, this was actually in one of my office mates' coffee cups last summer. And I really tried to get a nice clear picture because those chelicerae were just so awesomely shiny metallic green. But there was an awful lot of commotion going on too, because the spider was in a coffee cup that was about to have some liquid poured into it. So the spider was saved. Coworker recovered, everything was fine. But these are a really cool species that we should be starting to see fairly soon. They'll start out kind of small, but by the middle of summer, we should be seeing some nicely sized, bold jumping spiders. I should also mention there's quite a bit of variation in their markings. The one here on the right, that's, I guess you'd say, typical. That's the one I seem to see most often. Is they've got a white dot in the middle of the abdomen, but they can also have kind of an orangish dot to them. And sometimes those markings are, there's several of them. It doesn't have to be just one white dot, but black, hairy, jumping, green mouth, you've got our audacious, bold jumping spider. Now, Susie Myers, when you gave me this Nefertiti book, you said, oh, I forgot I put that one into. Here's a clearer picture. This was not taken by me. These other ones were. This is the markings that can be quite variable on the back here. This again shows a white one, but this could be orange. There could be markings on either side as well. But this gives you a general idea of the shape of the spider. And again, the size, that abdomen would be similar to the size of one of your fingernails. Anyway, Susie gave me that book because she knows I have a fondness for spiders. And those of you who've been tuning in for a while now, you might remember I had Miss Dining Room Spider. I rescued her from between the windows in my dining room back in October, and in November she laid some eggs, and that's what's in the egg case that she's sitting on. She passed away a few weeks ago. In fact, I went to put her remains. I was going to wrap her up and put her in my compost. And all that's left is a few legs. I think my cat ate her. So anyway, this spider is no more, but I want to say I'm starting a new chapter in spider keeping. Today, I went out to check some of Ryan's salamander traps and pitfall traps. You may have heard of them, not in an amphibian context, but in an insect or invertebrate context, because pitfall traps are also used to capture beetles and other things that crawl around on the ground. If you sink a bucket or a coffee can at ground level and leave it out overnight, it's amazing what will walk and fall into it. Well, there were a ton of spiders in these pitfall traps. And this is another reason why I could never be a full-time wildlife biologist, because I would never come inside. I'd be trying to rescue everything from every experiment I was doing. So I pulled out a ton of millipedes, and I pulled out a ton of these little wolf spiders. So this is a good visual here. These two look like they're the same species, but a grass spider, these are the spiders that make those sheet webs with the funnel at one end. They're very, very prominent when we get into the later part of summer in August and September. And we can always tell a grass spider from a wolf spider by the two projections here at the tip of the abdomen where the spinnerets are. Now, wolf spiders, they do not use a web for hunting. In fact, I should mention too, grass spiders, their web isn't sticky. They don't catch bugs. The bug doesn't stick in a grass spider's web, but it creates a vibration that the grass spider can then come out and pounce on its prey. The wolf spider is an ambush predator, so not apt to spin elaborate sorts of webs or thick kinds of webs like this. So you'll notice that there are no projections on the tip of this spider's abdomen. I had to enlarge this spider picture quite a bit. This picture on the right here, that's, oh gosh, depending on what kind of screen you're looking at. I was going to say it's life size, but that would be scary if you've got a large monitor that you're viewing this on. But Miss Spider was with her legs extended. She was about the size of a silver dollar, and this creature here is with its legs extended is smaller than a quarter. It's a little bit bigger than a nickel with its legs extended. So I'm looking forward to many happy days with little Wolfie. I have not yet figured out what type of wolf spider it is. I've got some references. I've got some better pictures too that I can use. But it was trapped with, I would say, between all the buckets, I would say there was at least 24 wolf spiders that were in the salamander traps this morning. So hopefully Ryan will rescue some more of them when he goes out tomorrow to check on them. But there is a new day dawning in spider keeping over at Casa Otto. So I'll keep you guys apprised of that and different things that we learn about wolf spiders as that animal progresses in its life. Now, one more thing, every week we look at some reader emails, and this one, I tell you, I just had to say, what? So it starts off as though this person knows me, and then I looked and I thought, no, I don't know this person. And it actually caught my attention at the beginning. It says, in a few weeks, a natural spectacle will take place across much of the United States, one that is not found anywhere else in the world. Meet the Brood 10 cicadas. Woohoo! Now, we've talked about these guys before. We are not in the Brood 10 range here in Northern Illinois. These are going to be in Illinois, but they will be more down in Vermilion County, or the Danville area is where Brood 10 reaches into Illinois. So I thought, okay, well, I've been hearing about Brood 10. It is, I think, the largest brood of all the periodical cicada broods we have. But then she changes her tone and says that the rare phenomenon brings about many questions about how to deal with these insects. And then it turns into a commercial for insecticide. Spectracide, the brand with the easy to use, fast acting lawn and garden products after Spectracide, Triazicide, and concentrated and ready to use formulas. And then she starts talking about how what we need to do about these noisy insects and what we need to do if your yard is overrun by them. And oh, by the way, you can talk to an entomologist about it. But I felt myself getting more and more agitated as I was reading this. So I cracked my knuckles a couple of times and I shot off a response to her. I could not believe. I don't know, who all this went to, and I'm guessing I must have gotten on the list because I've written about cicadas in the past, but old Helena Clark at Lippy Taylor in New York City, she got a piece of my mind, let me tell you. Just to show you what I was so upset about, broad spectrum insecticides, they don't, they don't just, target one species, if there happens to be a pest insect. These broad spectrum insecticides, which are available on the consumer market, so anybody who hates bugs can go out and buy them, they actually brag about it killing 260 plus different kinds of insects on contact. When I was reading on their website, they have this precautionary statement, and it talks about how, you're not supposed to drink it, and it's harmful to people and animals, and it kills fish. Well, it also is highly toxic to bees. Do not apply this product or allow it to drift to blooming crops or weeds if bees are visiting the treatment area. Well, what area are bees not visiting when the cicadas are out? I mean, our bees are under so many threats, and now people are being advised to get rid of the noisy insects before they get overrun by them by spraying this poison. So anyway, Miss Pam got a little hot under the collar with that, and I shot Helena a letter back, an email, kind of stating my viewpoint on things and how these animals are to be appreciated after their 17 years underneath the ground. And if she'd like to learn more, I linked her to some of Doug Tallamy, the University of Delaware professor who's written books. His Nature's Best Hope is his latest one about how we really need to be conserving our insects by helping them out with native plants. Anyway, I went off on poor Helena. I'll let you know if I hear back from her. Let's wrap up with some happy things to look forward to next week. We're going to look at the dark-eyed junco and some of the other winter visitors that have graced us with their presence over the last few months. We're going to take a look at what goes on in plant stems and why they are important, even when they look like they're dead. Got some questions coming into the office about muskrats, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to answer the question of what is an erratic. Got some fun reader emails, and you never know what will be happening over the coming week. With that, I'm going to stop the screen share. And because we are a full service nature program, I'm going to share with you, these are the ticks that I had on me today. You've never seen a deer tick up close. I'm going to hold one up here for you. All right. Oh, and I have to tell you a little story. I found, oh, I dropped it. Oh, tech guy hates it when I get ticks in my keyboard. All right, so I actually went to the grocery store after I was out looking at the salamander traps this morning, and I felt a tick on me while I dropped it again, while I was in the store. I held it pinched between my fingers while I was checking out. I actually used the self-checkout so I wouldn't, accidentally drop it on the cashier. And when I got out to my car, I dropped it. So there's a deer tick in my car somewhere. There's a deer tick. Let's see, can I see?
Oh my goodness.
You see how tiny that is?
Tiny.
There we
Oh
go.
My tiny.
So the nice thing, I guess, if there is a nice thing about disease carrying arachnids, your body, our body is covered with nerves, and there's certain parts where your nerves are more sensitive. And when the tick crawls over that, kind of your senses get heightened and you can reach and find it. That's how I found the ones that I found so far. I was not following Dr. Tooten's recommendations of, I did have my pants tucked into my socks, but I did not have my sleeves taped shut. I wasn't wearing any repellent. The other thing Holly says you can do if you've been out in tick country is, tick land, you can, if you take a shower within 2 hours of coming indoors, there's a good chance too that the mechanical action of the water and your scrubbing and really just, feeling all over, you should be able to get all of your ticks off of your body. And there's no danger to having a tick crawling on you. The trouble only starts when they embed themselves. So with that, looks like we've got some chats to address. Sarah, your dog, did Molly get her Lone Star tick in Northern Illinois? That's an important thing to know because Dr. Tooten doesn't have any data yet from Kane County for Lone Star ticks. So good to know about that. What about if your dog rubs against you? You know, ticks want to find a good source of blood that they can stick into. So they tend to cling to whatever they've grabbed onto. I think, Chris, is your question, will the tick go from your dog to you? I don't think, I think that's going to want to find the blood supply on the dog. You can get poison ivy from your dog if your dog rubs against poison ivy and then rubs against you. But I think with a tick.
No, what I was asking about was when you put that stuff on your pants, I'm wondering if they rubbed against your pants, if that could cause a problem for your dog.
Oh, like the
insecticide.
Or the
yeah, yes.
You know what? That's a question for the manufacturer. I would think it might, because dogs, if they get it on their fur and then they lick, because that's you're not going to adjust that stuff. So I would now with the permethrins, like if you're spraying that on your clothing to treat the clothing, you don't want to do that when you're wearing your clothes. You want to treat the clothing and let it dry. Make sure it's good and dry before you put it on.
Oh, okay.
The other stuff, the DEET and the topical repellents, those those would go on wet, and you probably would want to make sure your dog didn't lick any of that.
Because I had one stuck in my back, a deer tick last year, and I actually think that it came from my dog, because she sits next to me and she has frontline and she has the Lyme vaccine, because I lost a dog once to Lyme disease. So I think that they don't stick on her or it kills them. And I think maybe that's how I got it stuck in my back.
Well, it's tough too. I had one, it was on the back of my arm. Was it last? No, I didn't get any. I mean, I didn't get any ticks last summer. This would have been 2019. There was a deer tick embedded in the back of my arm, and I noticed it when I pulled my shirt on in the morning, because the shirt kind of caught on it. And I looked, and there's places you just can't get to. And I did end up having to take, if you find it, that's the other thing. If you do find a tick is embedded, get in touch with your doctor right away, because they can get you on an antibiotic, and time is essential there. If you don't, if you wait, I want to say it's like a 72-hour period or something, then you're dealing with there's probably been an exchange of fluids between you and the tick. And
yeah, I went to the doctor right away.
Yeah,
they did. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. And I hate taking antibiotics, but if it'll save you the agony of Lyme disease, it's worth it. Yeah, Barb, you're talking about Rachel Carson. Yeah, a broad spectrum, anything really makes me nervous. And some of you might be thinking, but Pam, we were just talking a few weeks ago about how your restoration crew uses herbicides to kill plants. Well, that's a little different, because it's a very targeted application, and we're only going after certain non-native species. We're not spraying it willy-nilly. And the fact that you can just walk into any hardware store and pick up a bottle of this stuff and with no training at all, just start spraying it, it really, really makes me nervous. So yeah, again, if old Helena writes me back, I will be sure and let you know. Permethrin, yes, permethrin is what they use in dog collars, dog flea collars. And good to know that there was a Lone Star tick here. Yeah, I think they are here. And it's just a matter of us finding it and letting Dr. Tootin know. Any other questions or comments for the good of the group? Yeah, that stuff is evil. We're going to, we'll wrap it up for tonight, but we'll look forward to having a good-natured week, and hope to see you all again next Tuesday. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks. That was very cool.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks a
Bye.
lot, Pam.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Pam.